Republican in Wyoming just won a statewide primary running on the slogan, "Make the Secretary of State's office boring again." And the person he beat was the chair of the Wyoming Freedom Caucus in Wyoming, which should tell you something about the state of the Republican Party right now. So let me explain what's going on. I was reading a story in Politico about how the House Freedom Caucus spent about $1.5 million this primary season on 5 candidates, and they went 1 for 5. The guy who won, David Flippo in Nevada, he is such a mess that the retiring Republican whose seat he's running for won't even endorse him in the general. So functionally, they went 0 for 5. But I want you to look at the flip side of that, because every single Freedom Caucus member who ran this cycle without the caucus spending money on them won easily. People like Byron Donalds in Florida, Andy Biggs in Arizona, Tom Tiffany in Wisconsin, Barry Moore, his Senate primary in Alabama. So apparently the ideology still sells. The problem is that the endorsement is radioactive. Their own money is now worth less than nothing to their own candidates. And Wyoming is the clearest version of this, because that's the state that gave Trump his biggest margin of victory in the country. And, they also kicked Liz Cheney out of town 2 years before that because she dared to say that the 2020 election was not stolen like Trump said it was. More than a dozen Wyoming Freedom Caucus candidates lost to moderates on Tuesday. They got their supermajority 2 years ago in the state legislature and spent it trying to defund public media and dismantle the state's economic development agency. And then they also couldn't pass most of what they had promised anyway. So voters handed them power, watched what they did with it, and then took it back when they were unhappy. They built their entire brand on being the insurgents fighting the Republican establishment, and then Trump ate the establishment. So the real test will be in November, because Biggs is running for governor of Arizona and Tiffany's running for governor of Wisconsin. Both of those places are actual battleground states, and they're both selling this ideology to people who have never voted in a Republican primary in their lives. So I'm going to be tracking both of those races all throughout the fall. This is the stuff I've been covering for a long time. The races under the presidential line where the actual power is. So follow along if you're interested in any of that. Because what's super interesting to me right now is that Freedom Caucus money is now worth less than nothing to their own candidates. There's a word for an endorsement that costs you votes. I just don't think endorsement is it.